Hi, everyone, and welcome to the course of world history. I am Mr. Samuelson, and today we are talking about the British industrial power in the 1800s and how that really translates them into being kind of the first superpower. So, our essential question: how did the British Industrial Revolution make Great Britain a global superpower in the 1800s, the British century? All right. Well, the story starts, of course, with British industry. Great Britain was the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. And as that birthplace, they wanted to preserve that power and that advantage. So they had lots of policies in place that would limit the spread of industrial technology to other countries. They didn't want other countries to be able to do what they were doing. And this head start that these government policies had, combined with their inventions and innovations, really does propel the British from being a world power to the world power during this century. As industry grew, so did the wealth of Great Britain. This became a very wealthy country. From 1790 to 1850, the gross national product, the GNT of Great Britain, increased fourfold. Okay, they doubled and doubled again. They got super rich compared to the rest of the world during this stretch of time. And by 1860, Britain produced 20% of all of the manufactured goods sold in the world. Imagine that whole global market. This one little island, well, Ireland as well, but mostly the island of Britain, is producing 20% of all of the manufactured goods. That's how far ahead of everybody else that they were. The prosperity of the nation led to general prosperity of the British people. If we look here at this chart, this kind of shows overall world manufacturing. And you can see that Britain was always doing okay compared to these other European and American empires. Started to pull ahead in 1800. This is really where their industrial revolution is kicking into gear. And by the time we get to 1860, they have a marked advantage over the other industrializing by this point powers. And that is because of their massive head start. Britain had other advantages as well. Political stability was a big one. And the economic prosperity feeds into the political stability. This is amongst the reasons why, when Europe is kind of exploding in the course of the French Revolution, that Britain is relatively calm. It's because they have economic prosperity. The people in Britain are not poor like the people in France were. Also, Britain had been instituting modest political reforms all along the way. They weren't an absolute dictatorship, an absolute monarchy. So you get this comparative wealth of the people combined with them seeing political reforms coming their way. And the British people were not going to rise up and overthrow their government. Kind of as a symbol of that stability, too, we are entering into a period of Victorian rule in Britain where they will have a single monarch for over 60 years, going from the late 1830s all the way till 1901. Queen Victoria will be the one monarch. So again, adding to that stability in Great Britain. Now, with this increased wealth and with the political stability, people are happy, people are healthy, people aren't dying in rebellion and civil war. Population's going to increase, families are going to thrive, and the British population takes off during this 70-year stretch from 1780 to 1850. The population of the British islands increases from 9 million to 21 million people, more than doubling during this 70-year stretch. We've got a lot of Brits around, and this increased population is great for their growing industry. We've got a source of labor, but it's also great for their military. Industrialization and population increase help to contribute to the further rise of the British military. Now, the British had always had a great navy, okay? They've been the premier navy for a little while. There were others who every now and again thought they could challenge the British Navy, but they would always lose. Think Napoleon during the Napoleonic Wars. But during this period of industrialization, the British Navy becomes peerless. Nobody is close to them. And the British Army is also growing. See, they were once seen as an army that was simply too small. They were good, but they were small. So they could only do limited actions. They could only work in warfare with allies. But now, with the growing population, they're able to put more people into the British military. And now the British Army is a formidable fighting force as well. Never the peer of the Navy. The British Navy is always number one. But the British Army becomes more than a respectable force. They become a very high quality force. This leads to the development of, well, the explosion of the British Empire. Great Britain already had an empire, but it was a modest empire at this time, and it will turn into the British Empire. They leveraged that power, particularly of the Navy. This is the British Navy in a photograph in 1914, kind of the peak of their empire. And you see just the power there drifting off to the horizon. They use this Navy and their growing army to rapidly expand their empire. 1815 to 1914 really becomes Britain's imperial century, where British power touches across the world. They would say in 1914 that the sun never set on the British Empire because it was literally daytime somewhere in the British Empire all day long. Britain's unrivaled navy was the key to this and the backbone of their vast overseas empire, as Britain takes over a sizable percentage of the land masses of Earth. That is all that we've got today. British industrial power leading to empire. I hope that you learned a thing or two, and I will see you next time. Farewell.